Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the DVC Show. Coming up, Sean is going to tell us about his recent experience at Aulani. Hello, folks, and welcome. Coming to you from the Bob Varley Studio in Orlando, Florida. I'm your host, Pete Werner, joined in the studio this week by my good friends, Sean Falk.
Hi.
Our producer, Corey Fiascanaro.
Welcome home.
And via Skype, Melissa Valaton. Marissa. Did I say Melissa?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Marissa Valaton, the Marketing and Sales Director for DVCResaleMarket.com.
Hi, guys.
Did I get that right? Did I get that the rest of it right,
You got
Marissa?
that right. I answered to Melissa, too, so it's good.
I don't know why. I know you're Marissa, but...
The people I work with, I don't know, it's somehow like the twist of tongue. Melissa, Marissa.
Yeah, well, there you go.
It's a motto.
All right. So this week, well, first of all, just a reminder to everybody, our show is brought to you by the World of DVC, which consists of DVCResaleMarket.com. If you are looking for a DVC resale, hence the name, DVCRentalStore.com. If you're looking to rent out some of your points or looking to try DVC before you buy, it's a great place to go. And by Monera Financial. I always say Monera, the most dangerous website on the internet, because they make it painfully easy for you to finance your next DVC contract if that's something that you want to do. So MoneraFinancial.com. Links to all of those in the show notes right below this video on YouTube. So we thought we would talk to Sean. Even though we did a live stream of this on our DVC fan Facebook group a few weeks back, I wanted to talk to Sean about his recent experience at Aulani. It was his first experience as a DVC member out at Aulani. But now that a couple of weeks, you've been back for a few weeks, I wanted to talk to you about it kind of with some perspective. And your thoughts on it. So I will turn it over to you.
Yeah, it was a really great experience. I had a great time. It was myself and 4 friends. We got a 1-bedroom. So it was tight, but everybody was fine. But it was
yeah, but that's how you vacation.
That's how I vacation. It was free for them. So like they didn't really have a leg to stand on as far as like complaints go for them. So they just had to pay to get there and like pay to eat. So that was a low cost experience for them. But yeah, it was really, really nice. It was very different experience just because I've been several times, but this time, obviously, with how things are in the world, it wasn't quite the same experience, but a really, really good experience. And it was, and I think it's a great time now is a good time for first timers to go if you've never been to Aulani. I don't think there's ever been a better time than right now to go and have a good experience because, you know, there's just so little traffic around the islands right now because people aren't traveling as much. And the resort itself is just not very crowded at all. And you're able to do so many things that in some capacities you're not able to do some things you used to, but there's other things you can do that you didn't used to get to do. And one of those is the hot tubs. They have these really giant, almost like the infinity style hot tubs that look out over the ocean. Nice. And you can get in them at sunset and be like some of the only people in the thing. So, because there's like no one there, and they're huge. Like this is not like a traditional hot tub. They're massive, massive hot tubs. And I've never been able to get in them at sunset time because they're packed with people because they all want to be there to see the sunset because you have the perfect view. This time, maybe 3 or 4 people. And I mean, these could fit easily 50 probably, as far as the size. So it's a really cool experience right now.
Yeah. And, as far as traffic goes too around the island, that stretch going through Waikiki can be crazy. And you're telling me that it was nothing.
Oh, I could get from Diamond Head, which is the exact opposite side of the island. We drove from Diamond Head and did a hike and went to back over to Aulani because I had told my friends before it's about an hour and a half is what we should expect each way, because just traffic and getting there, we were able to get, I think we clocked it at like 27 minutes was how long it took us to get from one end. So there was no traffic whatsoever, no stop, nothing. And that in itself was amazing for just driving around the island and exploring stuff. The fact that you could get anywhere you needed to go, really, even though certain things were closed, you could get most places in a really decent time.
See, now I always now I've never gone to Aulani using my points as a Disney Vacation Club member. I've always done cash, but I always rent a car when I go, and I am so excited for my next trip as a DVC member because I won't have to pay for parking.
Right.
Because the parking fee at Aulani,
it's like $40 a night.
it's like $40 a night.
Maybe it's 30 something, but
It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's
high.
like really expensive, but if you're DVC, it's free. And so I'm very, very excited. I'm very excited about that.
And we also, I will say, car rentals right now, because of the lack of tourism right now, are so heavily discounted. I was able to get through Dollar Rental because I'm not too choosy on my rental company for cars. I'd used Dollar Rental, and we got a Ford Explorer. So it was more than big enough for 5 people, and it had a whole third row of seats if we had needed it. And we got it for maybe about $300 for the week. So yeah, about $310, I think.
$300 for a car rental
for a whole week
in Hawaii.
Because Pete and I went, and it was a convertible, and it was a Mustang, but for that one day, it was $200 and something. Yeah.
Well, that's because I rented it. I rented it at Aulani, and because there is I think it's a Hertz.
Yeah.
A Hertz counter in Aulani, and it's. I mean, rental cars on the island on Oahu are expensive to begin with. They're even more expensive when you rent them at Aulani, but because of that parking fee, I wouldn't rent a car at the airport and drive to Aulani. So when I wanted a car, I would just rent it for the day. But,
yeah, that in itself is a big savings just from having that. But I think that and a big aspect of it, of course, right now we're in the early stages of 2021. There is a lot of social distancing, and Hawaii is very, very strict on their policies, much more strict than Florida, much more strict than many, many states are, if you're deciding on which Disney areas to go to. So it is very strict. You have to make sure you get tested you have to be tested and get your results within 72 hours of your final flight. So my layover was in LA, so it had to be within 72 hours of that flight, Pacific time, because that would have been the time zone. So it's a bit of a time crunch to get there, but there is this weird ease when you're there of feeling back to some kind of normalcy, because you just know, like, everybody there has been tested. Everybody there, it's much more secure. And when you're driving around the island, they have these like screens up that say how many COVID positive people there were. And we were, looking at it like how crazy it was, because they had the advertisement up and it was like, be really careful of COVID. Don't get in too big of groups. Hawaii's already had like 130 something cases, and we just, be careful. And we're like, oh my God, 130 cases. Like really? Like, or whatever. It was so little, but it just had this, like, beyond wearing a mask and stuff, there was this like, hey, it's kind of cool to be a little more comfortable and just relax and feel like you're back in some kind of normal times by comparison, because when you are out by the pools, you don't have to have your mask. You need it to get there, but obviously you wouldn't wear a mask in the ocean or in the pool. And then of course, if you're laying around tanning at your chair, you don't have to either, because they've kind of clumped them in family groups. So they're in either sets of 2, 3, or 4 around, and they already have social distanced the chairs, and they are literally like zip tied and bolted into stuff. So like you cannot pull chairs to go other places. So they are set 6 feet apart everywhere. And they're like, as long as you're in your bubble, you're fine. So that part of it was really cool.
And obviously it was safe because you and all your friends came back, and nobody came back with an extra souvenir, right?
Correct. Yep. So
Now,
yeah.
Marissa, I didn't ask you this before we started recording, but I assume, have you been to Aulani?
I have. Yeah, I actually went when I was pregnant, so it was kind of my baby moon. So I went there about 4 years ago.
Cool.
And now, obviously, on your side of things, you deal with dvcresalemarket.com, of course. Talk to me about like what's the argument you make for buying a resale contract at Aulani. Now, what Sean bought, we were on the cruise. We were on Disney Cruise Line, and he bought direct.
Mhm.
How many points did you buy?
170.
170 points. So what's, I hear all sorts of things about Aulani resale. So just talk to me about Aulani resale.
Yeah, so I think right in the beginning with Alani, it could sometimes be tough, and it kind of depends on when people have bought because Alani's been for sale for quite some time now. So there's people who bought a while ago who maybe bought in at around $100 per point. And then there's people who are buying today that are at the 190 minus the promotion. So they might be at about 175 per point. So it really kind of puts an interesting range on the market in terms of where people can sell and break even or pay into close if they have a loan. So it does make the market just a little bit more interesting. However, what I will say probably in this last year is Aulani really has risen from being, hey, it's not on Disney property, it's got higher dues, it's kind of lower on the economical Best Buy. But this last year, we saw it rise really high to the top where you go, okay, if we look at the past year's increase on dues, Aulani increased the least at 0.27%. So it sits now kind of in the upper middle side on dues. It's an amazing purchase price when you take in consideration it goes into the year 2062, and you can snag it at less than $100 per point in some cases. So you're talking $100 per point savings buying resale versus direct, which is pretty fantastic. So Alani's really jumped to the top. If you go to our site right now,
I am.
We literally we're sold out.
You've got, I was just taking a look. And you've got a ton of listings, but they're all either offer accepted or sale pending. You got, I see, maybe 5 out of 25 or 30 are available. And you're right. You're talking about $100 a point, $101 a point. I'm saying this and trying not to look too much at Sean, because I think he should add points on, and this would be.
Yeah, and I've been considering it just because this was low season, and I am, as we've talked about on other shows, I'm in the 1-bedroom camp now specifically for Aulani. I wouldn't get a studio there just because I want to be able to cook there. That's more important to me than at Disney World. There's so many dining options. Were I vacationing at Disney, I would want to eat out pretty much every meal if I could, as long as I can afford to do it, because there's so many restaurants that I love and want to eat at. Aulani has never really been in my top tier as far as food goes, and that's never been. They do have a signature restaurant, Ama Ama. The food's fine. It's not going to compare to signature restaurants in Disney World or even at Disneyland as well. And then they do have Makahiki, which is their character buffet.
Normally, yeah.
Yeah, normally it would be a character buffet, and it is very good. The breakfast is horrible, but the dinner is really good.
It's very inconsistent because I've had meals at Makahiki breakfast that were out of this world.
Really?
And then the next day I go back.
It's bad, yeah.
And it's leaves something to be desired. But character interaction at those meals is phenomenal. But of course, there was no character meals going on. Were you able to eat at Makahiki?
I did, yeah. And I actually thought that it was closed. So Aulani now has an app. They didn't used to have one. And thanks to the app, I actually was able to figure out the restaurant was open very limitedly from 5:30 to 8:30 every day. And you do have to make a reservation. And the food was so good. The food was the best it's ever been there. It was better than Ama Ama ever has been. It was better than the normal buffet at Makahiki. So it is, you kind of get 2 or 3 it's a 3-course meal, and it's $60, I think, and $59.60 somewhere in there, and you get a choice of 3 different appetizers, maybe 4 or 5 different entrees, and then 3 desserts are the options. But they are really good. Everyone's food was great. Everyone loved their meal. I tried everybody's food. It was all fantastic.
And Ama Ama was closed.
Ama Ama's closed, yeah.
Which I'm surprised because that's open air.
I know, right?
It doesn't make any sense. I mean, you have an open air restaurant.
I know.
That's like the perfect place to have open right now.
Yeah. And then Makahiki, everything's the outside area to sit. So, like, it's all outdoor seating for that one.
Yeah, it doesn't. But then of course there's the convenience store that's there, like on property.
Right. Yeah, there's a convenience store across the street, so you can get quick groceries there. But because we had a car, we actually drove. There's a Safeway, which is really good for actual grocery shopping. We did go to like Walmart, Target kind of places, but they don't have a lot of fresh produce there. So like even for chicken and stuff, like we had to go to a Safeway grocery store because when we were at Target, they only had like 5 fruits and vegetables. So like you could get bananas, pineapple, tomatoes, cucumber, and like that's it. Like that's your only option. And then if you wanted chicken or anything, they don't have like fresh chicken at like Walmart and Target and stuff. It's all like frozen chicken that you'd have to thaw it out and you just get a little bit of it. So like it's in these really small packets. So you really have to go to like a Safeway or a traditional grocery store to get like chicken breasts to cook or like ground beef or something. They had nothing like that.
And of course, one of the thrills of being with Sean at Alani when he's cooking chicken in a 1-bedroom is how he sets off the smoke alarms.
Yeah, I had an incident like that again. Actually,
did it again?
It was with macaroni and cheese, but yeah. So
who the hell sets off a smoke alarm cooking macaroni and cheese?
I don't cook.
You're not. Yeah. Well, you don't, and you shouldn't.
I don't. Yeah, my friends were like, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" Because like literally, it was just smoking, and I was like the water had overflowed, and I was just still stirring. They were like, "Stop stirring it! Like it's already overflowing, and there's smoke everywhere." And I was just still like not paying attention. Just
here's the thing. He can bake like nobody's business.
Oh yeah, I can.
Okay,
yeah.
He can bake like nobody's business. I don't know what the disconnect there is.
I don't know.
You would think that baking is harder than regular cooking.
Yeah, I don't like cooking, so it's no loss to me that I can't do it. But so Alani, I think now is the best time for somebody who's never been to Alani to give it a shot. But I also think because of not just the social distancing aspect, it's just a cool experience. But on top of that, if you want your Disney fix and you've not been able to get to the parks, and especially if you have someone who's compromised, like immune compromised back at home, and you can't afford to risk going to the parks and being around people, as good as Disney World does at making sure people try to social distance and stuff, there's a limit to how much can be done when you like sit on a ride and then the next person, you sit right after somebody. I mean, what can you do? Just the screening to get to Hawaii and the screening to have to go to Alani is much more strict, and it's much more comforting, I guess, coming home.
Well, I mean, really, there is no screening.
Correct,
going to Hawaii there is, but as far as inside the United States, like in the continental United States, there is none. So, did you have to show proof that you were COVID negative before you got on the plane?
Yeah. Yes. So you are. So you do have to actually register with travel.hawaii.gov, and you have to enter your flight information. They need to know where you are, like what airline you're with, what route you're taking, when you're supposed to land. And at that point, they give you these documents that you need to upload. So you need to upload a lab results copy of your test. It has to be from very specific places, and they have like a list of where you can get these.
And
from.
how early, like how many days before you leave?
So it has to be within 72 hours of the last flight, but it got a little complicated because, so for me, I used Walgreens for their ID Now, and it costs about $130 here. One of my friends was coming from New York. Hers was about $200, and she actually did hers at Newark Airport to get hers done, and those were all acceptable. So you have to book it they only allow you to do bookings 3 days before the test, but you also have to do it within 72 hours of actually flying. So it was like January 3rd. I'm like on trying to get my appointment for the 6th, like 3 days later, because I was flying out the 8th. So I need to make sure like all the stars kind of align up. So you have to be diligent, but I have no concerns that DVC and Disney people can't handle doing that, because they do it with fast passes and dining all the time, so
But
they're up and ready to book.
Right, exactly.
Stuff, so.
No, but you bring up a good point that there really isn't any place else you're going to go right now where you know everybody on that plane and everybody in that hotel had to produce a negative COVID test
to get
before they could even get there.
Yeah.
That's probably about as safe as it gets. I mean, Marissa, would you consider going to Hawaii right now?
Absolutely.
All right, let's go.
I didn't even realize, I thought through the hotel side, but Sean, you bring up a good point just with the flights alone. I think that's kind of the most nerve-wracking part, is getting on a plane where you're recycling air, but to know, hey, everybody on this plane is COVID negative. That's a huge point.
But a point of reference, though, and again, I'm not a medical expert, I'm not a virologist or anything like that, but very low incidence of transmission on planes, because yes, it is recycled air, but it's filtered. Every time it's recycled, it's filtered. And I know that the airlines, especially the major airlines, have really upped their game with that. So there is this.
Well, also any restaurant you ate at around the island, as soon as we sat down, number one, you had to they made you clean your hands and stuff before you came in. But as soon as you sat down, they brought over a form, and you had to fill out a piece of paper saying who you were, where you're staying, and it was all for contact tracing. So and a contact number, so they could get up with you, so that if somebody in that who had dined there came up positive, they could retrace back to everyone and be like, you were at this restaurant at this time, somebody else that was in the restaurant, they came up positive. And so they were tracking everything. So I was like, okay, for a lot of people who would have a lot of concerns, this might be the place to go. This might be
I'm going to be honest with you, because you know how I feel now about traveling. The more I hear you talk, the more comfortable.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here going, okay, I've got the points.
Right. Should I do that?
When can I make that work? Because I got to be honest. I think this is true for all of us. I love my home. I do. I have a great house. I'd like to get out of it.
Ready to go. Yeah.
I would like to go somewhere. Yeah. But I keep saying that once I get the vaccine. I'm going to get the vaccine at 9:00 in the morning, and then at noon, I'm going to get on a plane and go somewhere,
Peace out.
But yeah, it's, you definitely make it
appealing. And I think, and that is, and I know Pete's feelings on it and how strict he needs to be. So the whole time that was kind of my thought was if I had how would I feel if I had someone who, needed to make sure that they were as safe as they could possibly be, because we try as much as we can. But I've said before, when my dad was alive, because he had lung cancer, I would have taken probably different precautions than I do at this point. I follow standards, but I also would have been hey, I can't go around him just in case. I think it would have been more in the forefront of my mind. Whereas here, it was just okay, it's kind of all done for you, because they make sure that you stay to what you need to do. And so they give you a QR code, once you get cleared with the state, and that was so quick. Once I uploaded my documents, they had cleared me to go in the state within an hour or two. So it wasn't days of waiting to get your QR code and get your approval from the state. They were on it so fast. And when the plane landed, I had read stories where they were oh, you have to wait hours to get cleared to go into the state. I got off my plane and we just walked right off. There was no problem. There were a lot of police and guards and stuff, and you would have to go up to a table, present your QR code, and they would have to scan it, make sure that it came up as your results. And they kind of had two areas, and it was either you're leaving this airport or you're going to a hotel to quarantine kind of thing. So that was depending on which camp you fell in, that was where you were going. But because we did our due diligence and we had everything like it was supposed to be beforehand and did our research, like there was no issue at all. We had no problems. They were like, yep, have a great stay and you're all cleared to go. So, and it was comforting knowing that everybody, especially for some of my friends, like one of my friends that was there, she works at Mount Sinai. Those are called, right? Mount Sinai?
Yep.
Right? Mount Sinai in New York. And, you know, she needed to be very cautious, very careful. And for her patients, she was like, you know, I need to make sure. And so, you know, she was great. She got tested as soon as she got back. She was fine. She got tested before she left, all this stuff. And so she even had a different outlook on what she needed by comparison to other people. You know, obviously I do real estate, so I need to be careful being around people and all that stuff. But hers, she's in medical and needed to make sure that she was as cautious as she could be.
All right. Well, you got Marissa and I wanting to go.
I know. I'm ready to go.
Yeah,
So
and
let's
then-
go. Let's do you and me. We'll just go.
Do
Even
it.
then, the prices for flights weren't that bad either.
No, they're
so-
not at all.
The
No.
prices are really good. All the middle seats were blocked out on all the planes, which actually there were so few people on the plane, we all got our own rows for every single leg of the flight. So we had 4 total legs there and back. And we had, exit rows, and they were literally just like.
It almost sounds like post-apocalyptic.
It's weird.
Yes.
Okay.
But
You
yeah,
know,
as soon as they clocked in, or as soon as they shut the doors, they were like, okay, like anybody who wanted to like get their own row, you could and be like completely distanced even in your own row. So like it was really nice because it's such a long flight that it allowed you to like have 3 seats to like stretch out and put your feet up and all that kind of stuff. So that part of it was really, really great.
I don't know. Every time you talk about it,
I know.
I think
Yeah.
like, yeah, maybe
And
it's
it's just,
just
it's all of it. It's the comfortability, it's the weather, it's, you know, it was so nice. It's the first time I went and it didn't rain one day the entire time. I was shocked because usually it rains a lot in Hawaii. And like while Disney's luau wasn't open, there were other luau's around the island that were. So we did go to one and it was really good. Like it wasn't as good as Disney's, but it was still a good luau. And I was like, okay, you know what? At least my friends got the experience of doing it. And then I was like, listen, like someday, like whenever we get to come back, because DVC, and I'm doing this, I guess, for the next like 40 years, because it's like 2062 is where my thing is. So I'm going to have a lot more opportunities to go back. And, you know, we can do the spa, which is one of the best spas it is the best spa I've ever been to.
yeah, that's a big negative for me that the spa's not open.
Yeah,
but
the spa's incredible, especially because you're not like a beach person.
No.
Like for me, I'm a beach person, so I was like, I can just go tan. That not being open or Disney's luau, it gave a lot to look forward to the next time when you go back. Also, there's like this wedding chapel right next to Aulani that wasn't open, but usually there's like 100 weddings a day there that take place. They do this like hourly wedding thing.
it's like McWeddings, yeah.
It really is. It's like a drive-through wedding kind of thing. But like, so they that was not open, so it was really odd not seeing that because there's constantly weddings going on. But also the Four Seasons is not open, and that's another positive as well because usually the private beach is split between Four Seasons guests and Aulani guests, and we all get to use the beach together. And because the Four Seasons isn't open, it is exclusively for Aulani guests right now. So I mean, at any given time, there's like 20 people out there. I mean, there just was nobody, and it was so
Wow.
easy to get photos. And you saw people doing photos, you saw people flying drones, you saw people laying around like tanning.
Well,
and
you got to be
swimming.
careful with the drones. They will yell at you.
Yeah, if you get too
I
close
learned that
to
the hard
building,
way.
yeah, if you get too close to the building, they will get upset. But they even have this like sunset cruise that's going on as well. So they had this like boat that would go out and do a sunset cruise as an excursion option, and so that was really cool.
Well, and just speaking of airline of flight prices, now this is coach, like basic on Delta from Orlando to Honolulu, the week of March 14th,
That's what
$584 round trip.
No way.
$584. Economy Comfort is $1,046. And the lie flat Delta One round trip is $3,650, which I can tell
and
you
Delta's
right now
still no
is a
middle seat.
phenomenal price. Because normally that's about $5,000 or $6,000 round trip.
Yeah.
So,
And then there is no middle seat and all that. We went in January, so our flight, we did coach. The very basic economy for that was $410, I believe, was the round trip.
Jeez.
So about $410.
come on, Marissa.
I know.
Just leave these
The more
guys.
we're talking,
We'll leave
the
these guys. You and
I'm
me.
ready.
You and me.
Yeah. So for the 400 range, like, I mean, you're in a good price point. I think we paid a little over $5 for ours, and because I'm a Sky Miles member, so for Delta, so that allowed, like, doing main cabin allowed me to get some extra upgrades, like free bags and stuff, so that counterbalanced some things out that made it cheaper for us. But actually, because there were so few people on the plane, they bumped us up several times to Comfort Plus, and especially on the Orlando to LA, because remember, California is shut down as we're doing this, and when I went, California was shut down, so nobody was on any planes going to California. So it was literally just kind of our group as some of it. So they were like, oh, you can just sit in Comfort Plus if you want, or you can just sit up here if you want to. They didn't, not first. They wouldn't let us do first or lie flat, but pretty much wherever you wanted to go, they were like, you're good. Like, just do your
Unreal.
thing. Yeah.
Unreal. So,
Very cool.
all right. Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Sean. Thank you for Marissa for being with us. Thank you for Fiasco for not
Pressing
saying
the buttons.
pressing the buttons and not saying anything.
Oh, hold on one second. I do want to throw out Pearl Harbor's still open. So if I wouldn't want people to think there's nothing to do around the island. So Pearl Harbor's still open. Dole Pineapple Plantation is still open. Diamond Head, you can still go hiking. The malls are still open. That marina is still open. I can't think of the name of it. But it's a big tourist area as well. The only main things that are closed are like the Turtle Bay Resort on the North Shore, but all the rest of the North Shore is open. Like Haleiwa is like a cool, like 1950s, 1960s community that you can go check out.
Oh, I love Haleiwa.
And then Coalina Ranch is closed, and that's where you can see the things where they filmed, like Jurassic Park and
Yeah.
Lost and that stuff. Like, that's not open on specific days. So there's certain days where it's not open, but there is a lot to do around the island, and it is open.
All right. Well, there it is. Hope you enjoyed that. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Marissa. Thank you, Fiasco. Thank you for joining us. That's going to do it for this week's episode of the DVC Show. We'll see you again next week.